The first season of The Promised Neverland comes to a close, and its ending features a revelation so shocking, it'll practically rip your heart out. The orphaned children of the Gracefield house make their great escape in the final episode of the first season of The Promised Neverland. This review is going to be absolutely spoiler-ridden, so make sure to go check out that final episode before you check out this review. A lot of you guys have always asked me, why don't you read the manga version of The Promised Neverland? And this episode right here was a perfect case for why I do not read the manga. I always want to be surprised, and this episode featured a massive revelation at the end, which absolutely stabbed me in the heart. It might be one of the most disturbing revelations from the entire series, and it also made me realize the absolute genius that is The Promised Neverland. First, before I get into the official review, it has been officially announced that there is going to be a Season 2, and this has me so incredibly happy, because I can say without hyperbole that The Promised Neverland is one of the greatest anime series that I have ever seen, and it has officially got its hooks in me. I cannot wait to see where this story is going to be headed, because from this point on, Emma, Raye, and all of the older kids from the Gracefield house have officially escaped from the orphanage. And now the series is going to open up in a completely different way. We're going to see the outside world, we're going to see how the demons interact with humans. Basically, the entire foundation of The Promised Neverland is going to change with the second season. But what about this one right here? How did it all come to a close? Well, let's just jump right the hell in. This episode is divided into two parts, with the first half being all about the escape of the children and how they all pull it off, and of course it's incredibly surprising, satisfying, and amazing to see. I think that Raye in this episode is kind of a representation of the viewers, of being left in the dark and seeing this amazing plan come to fruition, because he had no idea that Emma had actually come up with such an intricate plan to allow these children to escape. We already know that they make it up to the top of the wall, but how are they going to make it to the other side of the cliff? Are they going to risk going over the bridge and running into demon territory? Or are they going to have some other crazy plan to get to the other side? Well, as it turns out, it's a crazy plan. All this time, they've actually been training to create these ropes which have rocks tied to the end of them, and they're going to strategically throw them to the other side where they'll get wrapped around a tree's branch, allowing them to get nice, tight, and taut, and then they're quite literally just going to slide over with a coat hanger. It's insane, it doesn't seem like it would work, but honestly, they pull it off brilliantly in this episode, and seeing them all work together to actually make this happen and seeing the shock on Raye's face is one of the most satisfying things that I've actually seen from the series, especially the amount of competence with these kids. A lot of them are incredibly young, and you didn't think that they would be able to pull this off with a lot of bravery, but they actually managed to do it. But what about the younger kids, those who are 4 and younger? Well, we already know from the last episode that Phil has been left behind, but apparently a lot of the other younger kids are as well. And that's when Emma comes to the revelation while talking to Gilda in a flashback sequence that even if they do manage to escape with themselves, there's still all of those other children who are in the plants. Children who need to know the truth, and children who need to be saved. That's when Emma comes to the realization that if they do decide to leave now, a lot of the livestock at the orphanage is going to be incredibly low, which means they're going to have to make it a little more high quality, which means they're not going to be able to just immediately ship these children out, especially with the implication that they have to be at least 6 years old in order for this to happen. And what's even more surprising is that Emma decided to tell Phil the truth. Yes, Phil the demon child actually learns about all of this, and as weird and oddly creepy as the kid can be at times, he's surprisingly inquisitive in the fact that he's always sort of wondered that there's something not quite right about this place, especially with Isabella talking about harvesting and everything. So while he might come across as kind of like a dumb, stupid, happy kid, he's actually kind of intelligent and decides to go along with Emma's plan, knowing the truth and even deciding to stay behind, possibly acting as the brand new leader for all of these children, as well as prepping them for the inevitable escape or when Emma decides to come and save them again. It's amazing how they took this character with very little development and they turned him into someone who's incredibly deep in the final episode. Phil still scares the crap out of me with his gigantic and hilarious smiles, but still, I have a lot of respect for him after the end of this episode, especially because when he learned the truth, he of course reacted like any child would, immediately crying and sobbing, but then immediately was able to go along with Emma's plan. Emma, of course, is the last one to make her way across, and right before she does this, she comes face to face with Isabella, who's made her way to the top of the walls and is desperately trying to stop her. And I love how Emma just gives her this incredibly cold stare, basically saying, "There's nothing you can do to stop me. I'm going to be free from this point on," and she joins her friends, and they finally run off into the wilderness for their brand new freedom. And this is when we get what is probably one of the craziest scenes of the entire series, and one that initially I felt was kind of arbitrary, as we got a flashback sequence of Isabella actually growing up as an orphan, and getting to see what her experiences were before she became a mother. And the first sequence is her interacting with this other brand new character, this kid who goes by the name of Leslie, who is musically inclined, and he writes this song that Isabella really loves. A few years later, Leslie is shipped off and presumably is dead at this point, but this song ends up having a lot of meaning for Isabella, something that she even takes with her into her adulthood and when she eventually becomes a mother. And apparently becoming a mother doesn't just mean going through a lot of really hardcore training and learning to be like a French maid, but actually literally being a mother. She is artificially inseminated and actually gets pregnant, but we never actually get to see who her son or daughter is. That is until the biggest revelation of the entire episode, when we cut forward in time and we get the scene where Isabella is outside of the orphanage and she suddenly hears a familiar song, the song that Leslie wrote, and the person who is actually singing and humming it is none other than Raye. And that's when the big revelation comes into play. Mother Isabella is quite literally the biological mother of Raye. That's right, Raye is actually the son of Mother Isabella, and this moment, I have to say, guys, just absolutely tore me to pieces. It's so disturbing to know that this woman has been raising her son, knowing that eventually one day, she's eventually going to ship him off to be eaten by a horde of nasty-ass demons. The look of horror on her face when she realizes this also displays a lot of humanity for her character, as you can tell that she ultimately feels terrible about this, and it was something that she never really wanted to know. But my presumption is that when she actually did have this child, it was immediately separated from her, and it was only through a mere coincidence that Raye ended up actually being her very son. And this makes perfect sense, as Raye in the previous episodes was saying that he has memories of being a fetus. He has memories of hearing this song from his mother. Everything just comes together in that scene, and it absolutely blew me away. It's the type of scene that makes me want to immediately rewatch the season to see if I can see any sort of clues between the interactions between these characters. But the moment itself was just so heartbreaking to see, especially with Raye, who just casually asks that of Isabella, and the only thing that Isabella can do after getting her composure is simply to say, "It was all for survival." And so the episode ends with Isabella quite literally letting down her hair, symbolically letting her emotions go as she wishes luck to the children as they make their way in the world. She went from this one-dimensional monstrous type character into being one of the most well-developed characters of the entire series. The season ends with a lot of hope for the children, but I have a feeling that their hardships are only just beginning. So, what's the rundown on this episode of The Promised Neverland, the final episode of the season? It takes a lot for an anime series to blow me away. I've seen practically everything at this point, but this series, from a storytelling standpoint, from characterization standpoint, from the twists and turns, and the amazing fact that the series has such a limited color scheme, and the fact that it's all set in one single location, and yet it still manages to tell such an amazing story, which ultimately is just the prologue to something bigger, I have to say, this was a powerful and moving series, and it's only just the beginning. I absolutely love The Promised Neverland. It blew me away. It's the type of show that I went into with zero expectations. The only thing I knew about The Promised Neverland is that it was pretty popular amongst the manga community, but me, myself, I tend to mostly just like to watch anime. I'm not really that big a fan of manga. There's only a couple that I actually do check out pretty casually, but I have to say that being able to go into this series blind was one of the best decisions that I have ever made. It made every single episode just a tour de force. And every episode managed to end with a cliffhanger that had a lot of weight behind it. It never felt cheap. There were a few moments, I have to admit, like that one episode where Gilda and Dawn are about to get caught and Phil just walks in. But for the most part, every episode managed to have me at the edge of my seat every single time. Nearly every single character is likable, and there's still so much promise for this series, especially because now we're finally about to get out into the real world. There's even a scene in this episode where we get to see all of the demons gathering as they're getting ready to go on the hunt for these children. It's so disturbing how they literally treat them like animals. They're like, you can kill them, but make sure to not crush or kill the brain. I was really hoping we were going to get to see some demon action, but even without seeing that, just the revelation about Isabella being the mother of Raye has got to be one of the greatest anime moments of all time. It completely changed my entire perspective of the series and has only got me so much more hyped for the next season of the show. Like I said, I think one of the biggest accomplishments of the series, though, is that it all takes place in a single location and has a limited color scheme, and yet it still manages to pull off such an amazingly rich and riveting story, all done with amazing production value and expert directing. And as far as tension and horror goes, this series has it in spades. It's filled to the brim with it, and it gets my absolute highest recommendation. I absolutely loved this season, and the wait for the next season is going to be excruciating. Basically, what I'm saying is The Promised Neverland is damn near a perfect anime series, and this finale was perfect in my opinion. It hit every moment perfectly. I'm giving the episode a 5 out of 5, and you definitely should be checking out this series. However, if any of you did watch the very first season, or you watched the final episode, I absolutely would love to get your thoughts about it. Did you have any favorite shocking moments from the episode? What did you think about the revelation of Isabella being the mother of Raye? What are your hopes for the rest of the series? Do you have any favorite moments from the series, whether they be shocking, scary, or inspiring? What do you want to see from the future of The Promised Neverland? Let's just get a discussion going all about it in the comments section below. Thank you all so much for watching this review. If you want to see my previous reviews of the very first season of Promised Neverland, make sure to check out the playlist on the channel. If there are any other anime series that you guys would like me to cover, please tell me what they are in the comments section below. If I have the time, I will look at it. This is one of those shows that initially I didn't think about checking out, but a lot of you told me to see it, and wow. It just blew me right the hell away. So, there it is. Thank you all so much for watching this review. I'll see you all next time. And as always, stay down, baby.